There's a moment in life when you finally stop running. You stop chasing the validation, the approval, the affection, and especially the people who never reciprocated the energy you poured into them. It's not because you've become cold or bitter. It's because something inside you has cracked open, and in that quiet rupture, you realize that the more you chased others, the more you lost yourself. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He didn't just see the human psyche as a collection of thoughts and behaviors, he saw it as a battlefield between the self and the masks we wear to survive. To Jung, every act of chasing, whether it's love, friendship, recognition, or belonging, is a symptom of a deeper wound, a disconnection from your inner self. And once you stop chasing, everything begins to change. Not immediately, not dramatically, but subtly, powerfully, and irreversibly. In this video, we explore Carl Jung's psychological insights on chasing people, the hidden roots of emotional dependency, and how withdrawing your energy doesn't just protect your soul, it reclaims your power. You'll understand why your silence can be louder than your words, why absence can create presence, and why walking away can be the most self-loving thing you ever do. Let's begin. Part 1: The Hidden Psychology of Chasing People. What does it mean to chase someone emotionally? It's more than texting first or always being the one to reach out. Chasing is psychological. It's the subconscious urge to earn love, to prove worth, to be chosen. And often, it's rooted not in the present but in unresolved trauma from the past. Carl Jung believed that much of our behavior is not rational, but archetypal. Meaning, when you chase someone, you're not just responding to them, you're reacting to an ancient emotional pattern. You might be playing out the wounded child who never felt seen, or the rejected lover who believes they're only worthy if they're useful. This is what Jung called the complex and emotionally charged association that takes over your behavior without you realizing. In the case of chasing people, the complex is often built on abandonment. Every time someone pulls away, your nervous system interprets it as a threat. Not just to the relationship, but to your identity. And so you try harder. You become more available. You explain yourself. You fight to stay. But what you don't realize is that this reaction only deepens the wound, because the more you chase, the more they withdraw. The more you try to fix the bond, the more it fractures. This is not just a relationship dynamic. It's a spiritual loop. One that Jung believed could only be broken by confronting the shadow behind it. The chaser is often someone who hasn't confronted their fear of being alone. They believe that love must be earned, that connection must be maintained at all costs. But Jung warned, any love that requires you to abandon yourself is not love, it's servitude. The moment you stop chasing, the psyche experiences a disruption. It panics. It asks, who am I, if I'm not needed? But that discomfort is the beginning of healing. Because from Jung's point of view, every transformation begins in the dark when you stop grasping outward and start turning inward. Only then do you meet the part of yourself that's never needed to chase anyone at all. Part 2: The Archetype of the Chaser, Jung's deepest insight. Carl Jung taught that every behavior we repeat compulsively isn't just a habit, it's a mask, a persona adopted by the ego to cope with the world. The chaser is one of these personas. But unlike the confident leader or the nurturer, the chaser is ruled by fear of abandonment, rejection, or not being enough. This archetype forms early, often in childhood. It's born when love becomes conditional. When the child learns, if I behave a certain way, they stay. If I don't, they leave. And so begins a lifelong strategy of emotional pursuit, a belief that love is something you must earn through performance. But Jung warned that the persona is not your true self, it's a compromise. A survival tactic. When you wear the mask of the chaser long enough, you forget who you were before the fear. You become addicted to the chase not because it brings you closer to others, but because it protects you from your greatest fear, facing the truth of your inner emptiness. The chaser archetype isn't always desperate or loud. Sometimes it looks like the overgiver. The person who's always there. Always forgiving. Always understanding. But underneath that calm exterior is a silent plea. Please don't leave me. Jung saw this dynamic as dangerous not just to the individual's psyche, but to their soul. Because when your sense of identity is built around being wanted, your self-worth rises and falls with someone else's attention. You no longer exist independently, you exist only in relation to them. And this is where the shadow begins to form. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is everything you deny, suppress, or refuse to see about yourself. For the chaser, the shadow contains anger, resentment, pride, and most of all, the desire to stop caring. But because they believe these parts are bad, they bury them deep. And the more they suppress, the more fragmented they become. The truth is, your wholeness doesn't require anyone else's approval. But to reclaim it, you must retire the archetype of the chaser and meet the version of you that no longer begs to be seen. Part 3: Why you keep repeating the pattern. You've been here before. You pull away. You try to stop caring. Maybe you even promise yourself, this time, I'll choose myself. But then, something triggers you. A text unanswered. A cold response. A familiar silence. And suddenly, the panic returns. You're back in the loop. Carl Jung would say, this is not weakness, it's the psyche trying to resolve an old wound through repetition. It's called repetition compulsion, and it's the unconscious belief that if you keep reliving the same pattern, one day it will resolve differently. You're not chasing them. You're chasing closure. But closure will never come from the one who reopened the wound. It comes from you when you finally see the pattern for what it is, a cry for healing, not for reunion. Jung emphasized that the ego's greatest trick is projection. You don't just see a person, you project onto them all your unmet needs, hopes, and fantasies. You assign them a role they never agreed to play, the savior, the answer, the one who will finally make you feel whole. And when they fail to live up to that role, the illusion shatters, but instead of turning inward, you chase harder. You think, maybe if I just explain myself better, love them harder, wait a little longer. But every time you do this, you reinforce the belief that your peace lies outside of you. This is the psychological prison that Jung warned about, living through the external, instead of integrating the internal. You become a reflection of someone else's attention. Your value becomes transactional. And your self-worth? It becomes negotiable. But it doesn't have to stay this way. The pattern exists because there is something you have not yet learned, and Jung believed that once the lesson is integrated, the pattern no longer serves a purpose. The pain stops repeating not because the world changes, but because you do. You stop reacting. You start observing. And finally, you begin to understand, what you were chasing all along was not them, it was yourself. Part 4: The Power of Withdrawal. What happens when you stop? There is a silence that is not passive, but powerful. A silence that does not beg, does not explain, does not chase. It simply withdraws, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Out of self-respect. When you stop chasing someone, you don't just change the dynamic, you reclaim your energy. And energy, Jung believed, is the currency of the psyche. Where your energy flows, your identity grows. If all your focus is on someone else, then your sense of self gets built around their reactions, their approval, their affection. But when you withdraw that energy, when you stop feeding the fantasy, something incredible happens. You begin to exist independently again. This is the first taste of freedom. But it doesn't feel good at first. At first, it feels like grief. Like emptiness. Like being forgotten. Because for so long, your presence in someone else's world defined your place in your own. But Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming whole, always begins with a rupture. A break in the illusion. A collapse of the old self. And withdrawal is that rupture. In this quiet space, all the suppressed parts begin to surface. The anger you hid. The pride you swallowed. The pain you minimized. They all rise, not to destroy you, but to reintegrate. This is why walking away feels hard, because it demands that you meet the version of you that's been abandoned far longer than anyone else ever abandoned you. But here's the miracle Jung points to. Once you stop running from this inner self, once you hold space for your own unmet needs, the compulsion to chase disappears. Not because the other person changed, but because you no longer seek in others what you've finally given to yourself. Part 5, From Chasing to Attracting, the Shift in Energy. There's a strange thing that happens when you stop chasing people. They begin to notice. Not always with love. Not always with apology. But with awareness. Your absence creates a vacuum. Your silence speaks a new language. Your detachment, though unspoken, says, "I no longer need you to see me, for I have seen myself." Carl Jung would say this isn't magic, it's energy. He believed the psyche operates on unseen laws, much like nature. When you shift your energy inward, when you stop leaking it into the hands of others, you become magnetic. Not because you're trying to attract, but because you're no longer trying to convince. Jung wrote about the transcendent function, the moment when opposing forces within the self unite into something new. This is what happens when the chaser becomes the observer. When the need for validation transforms into the strength of self-containment. At this point, people respond differently to you. Some become curious. Others feel threatened. But most importantly, you respond differently to yourself. You stop performing. You stop pleasing. You stop negotiating your worth. And in this stillness, you begin to attract experiences and people that match your new frequency, not because you chased them, but because you aligned with them. This is the irony Jung understood so well. What you once tried to force through effort now arrives through authenticity. The moment you stop chasing is the moment everything begins to flow. And not just externally. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions become more honest. And your boundaries, once shaky and people-pleasing, now become sacred lines drawn in self-love. This is not arrogance. It's not detachment out of pain. It's alignment. And once you taste it, you'll never go back to the old version of you that begged to be seen. Part 6, Facing the Void, How Silence Heals You. There's a moment after you stop chasing, a space that opens up, vast and unfamiliar. This is what Jung might call the void. It's the space between the old identity that's crumbling and the new self that has not yet arrived. It's here that most people retreat. They go back to old patterns. They send that one last message. They apologize for setting boundaries. Not because they don't want growth, but because they're terrified of silence. Silence, to the chaser, is unbearable. It feels like rejection, punishment, confirmation of unworthiness. But Jung saw silence differently. He saw it as a gateway. A sacred space where the ego dies and the soul emerges. In silence, you hear what noise once drowned out. You hear the echo of childhood wounds, the voice of your true self, and the emotions you spent years avoiding by staying busy with others. The silence doesn't lie. It mirrors. And that's why it hurts, because it reflects back everything you've disowned, your loneliness, your unmet needs, your suppressed rage, your unspoken truth. But if you can stay in the silence, if you can resist the urge to fill it, healing begins. Jung believed that wholeness is not about eliminating pain, but integrating it. So when the void opens, don't run. Sit with it. Watch the emotions rise and fall. Let them burn. Let them break you open. Because in that burning, something sacred is happening. You're no longer needing someone else to fix it. You're no longer outsourcing your worth. You're becoming someone who can face their own darkness and still remain. This is where real power is born. Not from dominance. Not from detachment. But from the quiet courage to meet yourself completely and still choose to stay. Part 7, Becoming Whole Without Them. One day, you'll look back and realize, you didn't lose them, you found yourself. And in finding yourself, you stopped needing to be chosen by those who only saw fragments of who you are. Jung taught that the path to individuation, the process of becoming whole, is not linear. It's cyclical. It moves through pain, loss, reflection, and rebirth. And the most profound transformations often begin with a heartbreak you thought would destroy you. When you stop chasing, you don't become cold. You become clear. You become anchored. You become someone who no longer begs for crumbs while starving for connection. You start to attract people who are drawn not to your wounds, but to your wholeness. Not to your neediness, but to your presence. Not to your performance, but to your truth. And even if those people never come, even if you walk this road alone for a while, you discover something deeper. Your worth was never up for negotiation. You were always enough. But you had to stop chasing them to remember. Carl Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is not fate. This is a pattern. And now, you see it. Now, you are free. Part 8, you had to lose them to find yourself. Some people walk away from you, and it feels like death. But what if it's actually a rebirth? When you stop chasing, you step into your own gravity. You stop orbiting others and become the center of your own life. You no longer ask to be loved, you become the embodiment of love. Not the kind that sacrifices itself endlessly, but the kind that chooses itself, boldly and unapologetically. Carl Jung didn't teach us to escape suffering, he taught us to go through it, to face it, and to extract meaning from it. Because on the other side of every heartbreak is a deeper truth, a stronger self, and a peace that no one can take from you. So if you're in that moment now, if you're letting go, if you're sitting in the silence, if you're resisting the urge to chase, know this. You are not breaking down. You are breaking free. Part 9, if this message resonated with you, subscribe for more deep psychological insights inspired by Carl Jung in the journey to wholeness. Like this video to support thoughtful, soul-centered content. Comment below, what's one moment in your life where you stopped chasing and everything began to shift? Share this video with someone who's struggling to let go. They might need to hear exactly this. And if you're ready for your next awakening, don't miss the next video.